The first thing Giblet says to the player, "You're the one they've been talking about. I've heard this line many times, and I don't understand why the community doesn't stop here longer. They've been talking about. Not I heard about you, not Poppy told me, but they, plural, have been talking about the player, a group, before Giblet ever met the player, and they talked long enough for Giblet to recognize the player immediately. Today, I'm going through what Giblet knew and when he knew it. And the answer will completely change how you see that revival scene. Right after, when introducing the player to Chum, Giblet says, "Chum, this is who everyone's been talking about, Poppy's angel." Two things to notice. First, everyone, not a few people. The entire factory already knew about the player. Second, Poppy's angel. Giblet didn't coin that title. Dog Day called the player that in Chapter 4. It's a religious title from Dog Day's belief system around Poppy. Giblet, knowing this title means information about the player had spread throughout the entire factory, from the upper floors all the way down. Dog Day was at Safe Haven, upper floors. Giblet was at the recycling center, deep in the labs. They never met directly, but information about the player traveled from Dog Day's location all the way down to Giblet. That means there is an active information network operating inside this factory. And the player is the central topic of that network. And here's the line I want to stop at. Giblet says how many years we've been talking about taking this guy out. Years, plural. The plan to destroy the prototype has existed for years. Giblet wasn't improvising when he met the player. He was executing a plan that already existed, and the player was the final piece he'd been waiting for. When the prototype stabs the player, Giblet runs. That's understandable. He's afraid of the prototype. But notice this. He doesn't run back to check on the player, doesn't shout, doesn't panic, as if he already knows the player will be fine. Look at Giblet's face when the player wakes up. A normal person just survived a stab through the chest and submersion in gel. The normal reaction is shock, surprise, relief. Giblet has none of that. His expression doesn't change. He immediately moves to the next step of the plan. Compare that to when Poppy is captured by the prototype. Giblet clearly reacts. Genuine panic. Real distress. That's the reaction when something falls outside the plan, but when the player wakes up, nothing. Because this was inside the plan. And the first thing Giblet says after the player wakes up, the prototype has taken Poppy. Not "Are you okay?" Not "What happened to you?" Straight to the next objective. He doesn't waste time asking things he already knows the answer to. When the player sinks into the gel, Poppy whispers, "Because we need it to survive. Not you. We." Both Poppy and the player need the gel to exist. That has only one meaning: the player isn't a normal human. After the player wakes up, no gel on them, no blood on the floor from the stab wound. The gel is completely gone, as if the player's body absorbed it, as if the player needed it and used all of it. And here's a detail few people notice. When Giblet talks about what the prototype did, he says the things they did to us, not to me, not to toys like me. Giblet is placing himself and the player in the same category, same classification, experiment. Three things confirmed. The factory knew the player was coming before the player arrived. Giblet wasn't surprised when the player survived the gel, and Giblet placed the player in the same category as himself, experiment. Now put those three things together. Giblet calls the player the Playtime Butcher.
They're calling you the Playtime Butcher.
The one who has killed more of the prototype's forces than anyone else. Mommy Longlegs, Catnap, Doughy, Lily, all killed by the player, and Giblet, who wants to destroy the prototype, found something that had already eliminated the prototype's entire army without him lifting a finger. If the player is an experiment, Giblet is using one experiment to destroy his enemy.
Where this train is headed, right? I'm not some kind of hero, but I can help you.
Giblet says, "I'm not a hero," multiple times throughout the chapter. The community usually reads this as humility. I read it differently. Someone who genuinely doesn't know what they're doing says, "I don't know if this will work." Someone who knows exactly what they're doing, but isn't comfortable with it. And it says, "I'm not a hero." I'm not saying Giblet is a villain. I'm saying Giblet knows more than he shows. He was waiting for the player. He knew the player would survive, and when the moment came, he had exactly the right tool ready. The question isn't whether Giblet is kind, the question is who he's being kind to, and why. The question I'm leaving, they've been talking about, is who are they? Poppy? Dog Day? Or is there someone else in this factory watching the player from a distance that we haven't met yet? Comment below, and when Chapter 6 answers this, I'll post a verdict video immediately, no deletes, no edits.